Intanto, buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning, and thank you for being with us. Also to Mr. Fabiano and the Commissione di Difesa Vista, and to Mido, who's giving us this opportunity to talk about the Elisa project or Elisa project. It's a new way to do prevention in the field of amblyopia, and so we do hope that we will spread the news throughout Italy and hopefully also throughout the world. The new approach in terms of prevention is also led by new devices that allow you to make a diagnosis of sight defect that, if not corrected, will lead to amblyopia. So this project started in 2006, and we have this little girl, Elisa, and her mother was determined in preventing amblyopia, and the new device is now on the market in terms of diagnostics. And one of the promoters was also a member of the Lions Club, Mr. Giovanni Crosta, and this is why the Lions Club is also supporting us in this project. Mr. Crosta was then replaced by Mr. Gino Ballestra. He helped us in driving this project further. We have identified some of the key features for this sort of service. As I said, now these devices allow us to be very effective in a very short time, like for a couple of seconds, and that's enough for making a diagnosis. And also the brother of that little child had been saved by this Elisa project. So easy to do, and big saving also for society, with a reduction of to 1/10 of the money needed. So that we will act more on prevention, detecting sight defects earlier than the onset of amblyopia, so before the 3-4 years of age. This is the age when we normally diagnose amblyopia. So now pediatricians are in charge, they're getting ready for it, but for the time being there are still children that do not undergo any screening. And third on the list is the fact that we really want to have the best future for our children with this new device that I had shown you in the video. Well, we are able also to make a diagnosis when the child is 10 months old. The child is attracted by a sound and a light, and the child stares at this light for a few seconds and the test is done. We want, of course, also to use precise tools, and the diagnostic error is just one dioptry, so it's sufficiently accurate to identify those defects that can lead to amblyopia. And third, in terms of the objectives of the project, regards the increase in the awareness of such a problem. We want, of course, all the best for our children. This is the final aim. The fact that we intervene earlier on This means that we are intervening when the sight organs are still plastic, because as we reach the 5th and 6th year of age, then these organs become less and less plastic, and the harder it is for us to intervene. So the earlier the better. And visual acuity develops from birth and is not anymore plastic at 6 years and a half or 7 years of age. Of course, we try a rehabilitation strategy with maybe eye patches, but the later we intervene, the harder it will be to solve the problem. And as you can see in this chart, see the peak in visual acuity and the amblyopic eye, and the difference between the two. Also, what's important to highlight here is the fact that this defect actually hits 1 out of 30 children, and very often it is underestimated. I do believe that the problem of children being potentially amblyopic, and if we refer to statistics of 2015, then we're talking about 14,573 newborns, and if not early diagnosed, they will have one or both eyes not working properly throughout their life. And here the figures for the Lombardy region. This I've already mentioned. The age bracket between 10 to 22 months of age has been chosen because of their plasticity of the organs, but still the child is able to stare at the test device for a few seconds. In Bologna, we tested a high number of children, and we managed to do the test on all of them quite successfully. And now very briefly I'll show you what we do. So we have the child sitting on the laps of the mother and staring at the device. You see this is the new text device, and the black one was the first. The white is already a more innovative one. And here, this is the result we see on the device. This 275/050. Now, the advantage is that we have the binocular refraction, so not only I can know whether I have a high astigmatism, but also if I have myopia. There are the two elements that lead to amblyopia if not treated properly. So when we do the test, we give a code to each child. What we do is actually not a diagnosis, it's a screening. I was chatting with Dr. Prevella yesterday. He said that the ideal would be that all children would undergo an ophthalmological visit, but this is not possible in our country, so screening is welcome. If we give a judgment, we give it in terms of probability, and we then refer the child to an ophthalmologist for proper assessment. So a yellow code, we're almost certain that there is a defect, but this defect might not lead to amblyopia. Green code is we're reasonably sure that no amblyopia can develop. So red, yellow and green codes. There is also a booklet which contains a table with the different steps explaining also when we give a green, yellow or red code. It's an arbitrary procedure, of course, but science so far could not tell us whether 2.75 astigmatism will lead to amblyopia. So we need, however, correction in these children as we do for adults. So if adults would require corrective glasses, then we have to do the same for our children. Also, another very important element in the service we provide is not giving false. So when a child comes for screening, it's not that we do not have to do any further assessment. So we have divided between the yes and no in terms of likelihood to develop amblyopia. But of course, the pediatrician will have to continue on and doing the usual checks. Please tell me about the time, if I still have time. Okay, so I was saying the pediatrician is performing the lungs test to the child, which is an objective test. And so we rely actually on the child in terms of his or her capability to discriminate. But actually, it cannot be the child to tell us whether he or she sees or not. And so one of the strengths of this system is that it is an objective and repeatable system. And when we attribute a red coat, we repeat the test several times to reduce error margin. Strabism is key here, and this is why I invite opticians to be careful in correcting very young children. But if you see that a child is has full visual acuity, but we have amblyopia, you have to suspect Amblyopia, quite a high one, quite a strong one. We cannot know whether we have a risk of strabism if we don't put the proper drops. So we have to inform parents also that if conditions are there for strabism, we cannot see them if we're not using these special and specific droplets in the eyes. So really, it takes time also for us to explain parents what the test is not telling us. Besides explaining them about the different codes and the different colors, and then we always tell them, do not trust this test alone, and please go deeper if there is something worrying you, if you have a white reflex in the eye, so go immediately and see an ophthalmologist.
Come lo andiamo a fare? Io ho fatto un pasticcio, chiedo alla regia di aiutarmi un attimo a far ricomparire le slide.
I'm sorry, could you please show the slide again? Thank you. When screening is performed and when we are in a different location, we have to be informed about surgeons and to inform the parents because the opticians are only in charge to inform the parents about any specific problem. And this, of course, this condition has to be checked over time. We hope that through this new service, the screening service that some pediatricians and some nurseries still do will not be abandoned. Here you see, for example, the figures for Olgiate Olona. So 73% in the first year. In the second year, this number decreased significantly. And well, we analyzed this figure, and well, it resulted that parents brought their children for an eye assessment before we informed them. This is the most blatant figure in 2012. After 2012, we provided the service in a certain number of municipalities, And thanks to Gino Balestra, Como, Bustorsizio were one among the cities, and we hope we can also start this service in Milan. There is a great interest and also openness vis-à-vis this service. This slide is a rather provocative slide, but we also want for each individual player of the world of vision. So we want each player to have his or her own specific roles. I was very happy to share this meeting with Paolo Trau because opticians shall have their own role as well, or at least they should have the right instruments so that the eye doctor will communicate so that this service can be further provided. Well, we have already proven that this service is working properly, and we have already proven that the service can be implemented successfully. We will now try to coordinate the project. The project's name is Progetto Elisa. We will talk about this next year. I now would like to hand over to Paolo Trau for the next part of the session. Good afternoon. So, as Dr. Magni pointed out, I would like to thank Ferdinando Fabiano and Roberto Magni, who invited me here today. I'm here, let's say, to carry out a technical function, although I think I represent most of the audience, both morally and technically. What I will do with my presentation is actually focus
un focus sulla situazione.
I would like to focus a little bit on the situation. I'm not going to try to teach you anything. Most of you will certainly have something to teach to me and not the other way around. The integration of competencies is the prerequisite for our future. We should no longer act separately and independently, focusing on our own business. Well, and today's session is the best occasion to underline this concept again. I represent the optics schools, public optics schools, 42 at present, 42 optics school with 5-year curriculum, and this is well, it's a school that has been growing through time and that can offer many interesting options, both in terms of collaboration and also from a technical perspective.
Volevo inquadrare quella che è la problematica, quindi a corollario di quello detto dal dottor Magni. Vorrei inquadrare.
So again, I would like to focus on the issue of screening in Italy, screening during childhood. I will leave the issue of pediatricians aside for a while. I will go back to this topic afterwards. There has been a campaign going on since 2005, Occhio ai Bambini, promoted by the International Agency to Prevent Blindness. And well, this is a branch of the WHO, and in Italy it is closely connected with the Italian Association for the Blind. And since 2005, this initiative is carried out by the IAPB sections at a regional level. Then we have individual initiatives like the wonderful Elisa project and the network of public optics schools that since last year they have been promoting childhood screenings at a national level. Well, I would like to focus on the age, for which these activities are offered. I mentioned so school age from 6 years onwards, and Dr. Magni mentioned a type of screening that has to be performed at a younger age. This is what happens around the world. I was rather shocked when I discovered that in 1947, the state of California drafted a law obliging all schools to perform screening assessments inside their schools. Most US states have this obligation, this duty, and I think this is an interesting reference point. Again, overseas, here you see the indications. We are going to talk about guidelines for the moment. So guidelines are provided by scientific associations that are the most authoritative institutions at the supernatural level, I would say, the American Academy of Ophthalmology, American Academy of Paediatrics. Well, both, for example, as far as the age to intervene is concerned, suggest a screening from 0 to 3 years of age. The Canadians instead start from 3 years of age, however, they have a slightly different system. They want to perform a simplified screening from the very beginning at 3 years of age that, however, gives access to pediatric ophthalmological assessment. So it's a system with a slightly different philosophy. In the US, there is AAPOS, the American Academy of Pediatric Ophthalmology, and Strabismus. With the foundation, the Children Eye Foundation, that has been in charge of disseminating the topics that we're dealing with today. And again, these are examples that are very well rooted in the Anglo-Saxon world, and APOS too has an age bracket from 0 to 3 years of age. So let me go back to the practical information. Let's leave the general background for a while. So all this has to be done in view of correcting any visual problems or impairment. And for us as opticians, this is a problem because child problems in terms of frames and lenses are usually underestimated. And this means that the result is not a good one. The result is that a child wears a pair of glasses comfortably. A child, due to his or her own age and due to his or her ability to communicate, is not able to explain exhaustively why he or she doesn't want to wear that pair of glasses. So in reality, when a child is against a certain pair of glasses, this is because of some technical problems that I would like to discuss with you now. Well, this is a sentence that actually summarizes the whole situation that occurs if we haven't worked properly as opticians. So let's recap. I don't want to go into too many details. However, let's try to draw a list of the problems that we're usually faced in these situations. The requirement of a pediatric frame should be related at least to these aspects, then there can be others as well. Well, basically lightweight, due to the cartilage situation in children and to support wearability, stability and resistance. Well, this can mean many different things, and this is related to the final position of the finished pair of glasses. during the whole life of a child, during his various activities, not only when the child is in the store and tries the glasses. So this has to be taken into account for the years ahead. A pair of glasses shall not be stable only when a child is trying them out in the store. Resistance is another rather abstract concept. From a mechanical perspective, we should make reference to materials that cannot be used in pediatric frames. So high resistance steel or titanium, for instance, are not proper materials for child frames. So the materials that has to be used shall not cause any allergies. They should be easy to clean, thus complying with the basic hygienic requirements. And fit is also another important requirement. In my opinion, what we are missing is proper wording. When we use the word fit for the frame, well, we are actually using a word which is commonly used for shoes, for trousers, for apparel. From a purely linguistic perspective, I think we should use find a more precise word to define the standard setup of a frame. I don't have such a word for the moment. If you have any other word that better suits the eyewear, well, please go ahead. And then adaptability to the child's face. Well, children are changing constantly. If you turn your face and if you go back and look at your child has grown up, and the same applies to a child's face. So, as a matter of fact, glasses become too small. We cannot make them too big, and so they do not last too long. Therefore, glasses have to be adaptable. Of course, we cannot stretch a frame, but we have to take into account that adaptability is important, and it does not only refer to the technical parameters that we are familiar with, but it is also referred to optimum comfort that results from a series of thoughts that should be made up front. So when the optician approaches pediatric glasses, well, he or she should set up a project prior to offering glasses to a child. Atraumaticity, this is another bad word. However, it summarizes multiple concepts. So you have to design a product or choose a product that in normal situations shall not represent any risk or shall not cause any specific damage. And by the way, I would like to talk a little bit about an approach that we can borrow from other sectors, especially from the safety sector, safety at the workplace, or safety in general. And this is the risk assessment approach. According to this approach, a person, a technician, and human being is able to carry out an assessment beforehand about the dangers and the risks he or she may encounter. So again, just think about anything that could happen, and this should be done beforehand. Otherwise, we run the risk of using devices that can have intrinsic risks, sharp edges, for example, or metal parts, or when hitting against it, this can cause damages to a structure, to an anatomical structure, that is very delicate. Next to the frame, there are delicate structures like eyelids, like cheekbones, the nose that still has to grow, and they have a relatively low resistance compared to adults. So in case of an excessive weight, which is also important, or should the child hit against something, then low-entity devices shall be atraumatic.
Le criticità ottiche.
The optical critical issues we're more concerned with, and you see them here summarized. So horizontal ventricle centering, the corneal lens, the angles, and so on and so forth. But let's now dwell upon them one at a time. So in terms of centering, of course, symmetry is important in terms of two distance between the two pupils, and of course you have to include all this in your project. Another interesting element regards the centering related to the posture of the child, because the child tends to look upwards more than downwards or sidewards. So we need to take that into account when doing the so-called centering, this 2 millimeter higher with respect to the geometrical center of the circle of the frame, question mark. Well, you need to assess all this. So in our project, we need to take that into account. A 12, 14-month-old child, a child that still cannot walk, will have an upward sort of sight, and so the shape of the lens and the frame as well must take all this into account. Look at this situation, look at this child, a big child, around 6 dioptries. And in order to take all these aspects into account, we had to sort of reach compromise. So we had this likelihood of him using more the upper part of the lens, since he's very young. And so we needed to sort of decide whether we needed a larger lens with this upward shift of a few millimeters upward. But of course it's not a mistake, that was done on purpose, because we prefer to sort of provide for higher mobility and centering the lens in this way, instead of maybe making an aesthetically correct and proper decision. But we decided to give priority to the mobility of the child. So when leaning forward or backwards, the changes of the lens, because it's a positive lens, and so it increases its power, and the contrary is true for the negative lens. So 0.5 sphere doesn't tell us much, but the minus 18 or plus 12, well, this is more meaningful. And then another aspect we know very well is the pentoscopic angle. I hear colleagues or students that refer to the inclination of the temples with respect to the line of the face, but actually Mr. Andreotti, if you remember, had problems in this respect. The glasses were opened towards the front. Now, taking into account a +8 spherical lens inclined by 10 degrees, because an 8.08 with an 0.24 cylinder, then something changes indeed. So the pantoscopic angle doesn't have a precise rule, but if it is capped on an average around 4, we should be able to envisage such a condition. But of course, the sight assessment must be performed using the same criteria. Is that right, Dr. Magni? Another important element is the wrapping angle. Now, of course, fashion has had a saying in this, and fighting against me parent that wants the child wearing the same type of glasses I wear. But you are the technicians, and you are in charge also from a juridical viewpoint of this device. It's you then signing the declaration of conformity. And so you have to highlight possible risks in advance if such risks are still there. So it should be more up to us and not so much up to the parents to choose proper frames. Curved frames have problems. We're talking about a couple of degrees. If we have a higher inclination, it might be that it is nicer from an aesthetical viewpoint, but it is not corrective enough. The reference standard is ISO 8981, which focuses on uncut finished spectacle lenses. So lenses to be cut. I think that in your lab or in your sales area, you have this chart and display, because it's important to also refer to such tolerances. And also when we do the inbound checks, otherwise, we are obliged to make a sort of a deformity or non-compliance and non-compliance declaration. Of course, lenses are not easy to be sort of prepared and constructed properly, especially if you're talking about high powers. So be careful. If the lens is not complying with the standards, it's you in charge. It's not the manufacturer of the lens. It's up to us to then do the checks downstream. So in the different tables, you have all of the reference tolerances. Is like for centering, it's half a dioptry vertically and 2 dioptries horizontally. This is obtained through the Prentice formula. The simplified or the full one is H by phi. Some of the students know it very well. And you have H in centimeters, this prismatic deviation beyond which you should not go. A couple of words now on the morphological characteristics of a frame, the shape of it. We need to make a few considerations in this respect, because I have maybe to orient myself by means of the shape of the orbit. So this circle of the frame that follows, that does not go beyond that circular shape of the orbit. And here, this gives you the idea in the little girl in the picture. Say also, when we talk about regular shape. No, I don't like it round. Well, the orbit is not round. It shouldn't be necessarily round. And also, visual field must be taken into account. Frames and glasses in the past with a ratio between the longer and shorter side of the circle. Rectangular shapes are not respecting the visual field, and also recent studies are stressing the fact that you cannot get a full visual field with such shapes, rectangular shapes, and no rectangular shapes for children's glasses. They are not good even for adults. And then consistent centering, as I call it. Now, if the center of pupils and if the ray, considering as the center with respect to the channel or the circle of the frame. Now, if the ray is more or less constant, then that's okay. And this is what I mean by consistent centering. And if we look now closely to this, well, the eye should be in the middle and no big difference. It's like the pilot shape, or the drop shape, as we call it. So the pilot shape is the negative example. So this is what we should not have, because this increases thicknesses, and this requires for curves of lenses that are outside the optimal charts, use of higher refraction indexes, and costs also. We're increasing costs and increasing resistance and robustness. And now I'm referring more to designers for glasses. And here are a couple of examples. One is a positive example, an optimized frame taking into account all the requirements we have just mentioned. And you see that we have this patch for the coverage of the eye for the amblyopia problem, and then a negative example. And you see on your right, of course, it's a simpler and cheaper pair of glasses, but it doesn't have requirements. We mentioned no possibility of adjustment, no stability, so no robustness in the material, and it's soft, and most of the time you need an elastic band. But this elastic band, as Dr. Magni told me, well, in some countries it must have a specific resistance, like 1.6 kilograms, and then it has to break, because otherwise you run the risk of cutting the ear of the child. And I just did not think about it. And then also proper fit of the lens, because soft frames that are, good in terms of their ultramatic features, but then they don't provide sufficient protection, and lens could come out in a clash, for example, and they might run the risk of cutting the most delicate part, the upper eyebrow and the cheek. So this sort of very thin skin layer with a blood supply in it, and this means possible high damage to our children. And I would like to restate once again that this sort of a double finishing and smoothing of the lenses must be kept under control. You have uniform grinding, so if I have -12 with a few millimeter decentering and the thickness at the temples will be different than at the nose. So we need to take that into account, and we need to ensure for avoiding cutting edges in the lens. Have you noticed this issue? We need to be very careful. Another important parameter is the flexible temples. It's sometimes it's metal that is not like so much, but actually what you see on the left hand side, well, they don't need a spring hinge because of the high elasticity which is intrinsic in the material. If it is not possible, then frames must be flexible enough by means of the hinges, the temples. And then one last topic I would like to dwell upon is the ophthalmic lens. Of course, we would need a whole presentation on this topic by itself, but it's important, especially for designers of glasses. In terms of pediatric lens, we don't have much also in terms of diameters and in terms of materials. So there's not a wide range in this respect, and polycarbonate is the most resistant material from a mechanical viewpoint. So I'm talking about crash resistance. And also Trivex has very interesting features, even though it's harder to process and work on. But if we reduce the diameter, then we add some optical variables that are to be taken into account, because Mr. Sherling will be actually perplexed about these very thin lens, very beautiful lens, but then the spherical, the rate is actually terrible. Children might not complain, but they will not wear glasses. Actually, you need to take all this into account in your project, and changes in the curves of the lens will make different aberrations in the device you are providing. Aberration resistance, of course, all these materials have little resistance to aberration, even though surface finishings have improved lately, and especially in prescription lenses, by adding the anti-reflex finishing, it's important, and you can improve the situation, especially for positive lens. So surface treatment in corrective lens actually last less than with respect to stop lens. Also because of cleaning and other features. And then UV total protection. It's key, and all what I have told you is meaningless if we don't provide this UV protection. Actually, we've been repeating this for 30 years. You need to make sure that you have proper UV protection, and prevention must start from 0 to 6 years of age, because this is the sensitive period. So the eye, which is one of the target organs with respect to UV, so the eyes and the skin and the face, these are the target organs. And we have an accumulation damage. So from 0 to 6 years of age, we accumulate 80% of the total damage. And from 6 years onward, we have this 20% left. So it's important that we are well aware of this, and it's important that we start prevention right away. So sunglasses and hat for our children, also protection at the sides without curbing the glasses, and it might be that we can then save some money in the next 20 years thanks to the avoidance of skin tumors. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I would like to give the floor to Dr. Gino Balestra, who's the president of the Amblyopia Committee of the District 108 B1 for Italy. I'll sit down. I have no slides to present to you. And indeed, I am here as a member of the Lions Club, or maybe you're familiar with Lion Clubs in the world. I can summarize by saying that we have 1.4 million Lion Clubs in the world, and it's the most important charity organization in the world, and we're celebrating our 100th anniversary this year. The aim of our Lions Clubs is to assist and support people through subsidiarity principles, or by means of subsidiarity principles, so intervening where the government, where other public institutions are not able to intervene, so providing this support so as to increase social cohesion and helping in increasing the well-being of our society. Why are then we collaborating with Dr. Magni? Well, the collaboration with Dr. Magni started about 10 years ago, and it all started in a quite peculiar way, because as it happens, it was by chance that I met Dr. Magni, and it all started in a very special way. We wanted to understand, first of all, because every time we sort of start a service, we also have to sort of make an analysis. We're serving 100 million people in the world, and we're talking about $200,000-300,000, also in collaboration with Melinda Gates and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we met Dr. Magni by chance, as I said, and we started putting together 8 municipalities in the Olona Valley near Varese. They were consistent in terms of population, and in these 8 municipalities, Dr. Magni took care of the screening projects, and since he has been very successful, then a special device was donated by the Lion Clubs in the territory, so that these screening programs could continue on. And this activity is actually underway also in these days, and about 380 screening tests are carried out every year. in these 8 municipalities. Considering the success of this initiative, we gave as a gift to the Hospital of Legnano another piece of equipment of this kind for such screening, and now the Hospital of Legnano is carrying out another 1,000 screening tests a year. And most of this activity is carried out in this district 108B1, because I belong to this Lions district, so the Italian territory is divided into districts, and this district of mine, the 108B1, includes 6 provinces in the Lombardy region, those northern from Milan. The fact that we have given these ultrarefractometers was actually maybe not the most effective action, because these pieces of equipment were actually left idle for some times during the year, and so we decided to have a lower number of devices, but having these devices circulating around the territory. And this is what we started doing about a year and a half ago. So our team was set up with a physician and a few operators that are able to work with the machine. And then agreements were achieved with schools, with municipalities, and so it's now the equipment that is being moved around in the different sites of where the screening will take place. Now, these screening tests are continuing on. 2 cycles have already been completed. We have screened children from age to 30 months of age, so very small children were screened. In some cases, even smaller children, younger children, and sometimes also older ones. It happens that mothers bring their 2-year-old child and together with the siblings of maybe 4 or 5 years, and no pediatrician actually had never done a test on these children. Of course, we do the screening to them as well. So these screenings are, of course, free of charge. I forgot to say, but it's free of charge for the whole population. So far, in terms of the outcomes of this screening, 3,808 screening tests. Last year, this year, in a month, we have already completed, so end of last year, 682 children. And up to July, we hope to achieve 2,500 tests. And we are finding consistency with literature outcomes. So we find some serious cases and about 12% further that should be retested in a short time. So when you go back to your cities, if you're interested in this project, please get in contact with the Lions Club of your city, and you will find collaboration certainly on their part. There's no time for discussion because we have to move on to the next session. But we are here around, and just a couple of words on behalf of Mr. Trow. Yes, I want to thank my friend Sonia for having provided the know-how and the state-of-the-art in design and research work for children's frames of the New Optics Italy company. And here, the book on the Elisa project with all the details about our project. Thank you very much, and see you.